This is episode 101 of G.I. Joburg, 101 episodes in, and it's time we got a handle on a very, very important topic. It seems there is a divide in G.I. Joe collecting, and that's the vintage versus modern era split. My name is Steven, and I'm joined this evening by the best man to talk modern era versus vintage. He goes by the name Strydent.
What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. I'm very interested in getting into a little debate with you this evening.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. It'll be fun. I'm glad you had time and we finally were able to connect and do this again, you know?
This topic, to my mind, is so important that G.I. Joburg is doing it first, and we are releasing this on YouTube. So those of you who are YouTube G.I. Joburg viewers and have not yet dabbled with our podcast on Podbean and iTunes, I suppose this is your little taste of what we get up to. Episodes are longer in length, and we talk, whatever happens to spring to mind. And tonight, it's all about this tension that has emerged, this split in our G.I. Joe community. We have people on both sides, vintage purists and modern era purists, and it seems like there's a little bit of a little bit of a shunning or slighting of the other side. So
Yeah.
we're going to discuss from our respective points of view and try and harmonize these things. In case you do not know either of us, I am predominantly a vintage guy.
Yeah, and I'm mostly a modern guy.
Yep. That's not to say Strydent doesn't possess vintage G.I. Joe stuff. No. He does have a defined launch complex, if I'm not mistaken.
I managed to find an MMC. I'm actually about to finish that review.
Outstanding, man. That is terrific, and very well integrated with modern era figures as well. I mean, it's a spacious vehicle. It isn't necessarily prohibitive to one construction or the other.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you have
I
quite
have
a few
a handful of modern era figures and vehicles.
Yeah.
But here's my backstory, if I may just indulge in it. I mean, I realize I'm perhaps one of the rarer cases of a Joe collector who never stopped. I've always been collecting actively. When G.I. Joe stopped in '94, I would sort of trawl through flea markets and dusty old toy shops, and I kept buying up until the advent of eBay in sort of '99. And ever since then, like that was my avenue for years and years and years, filling holes in the vintage collection, holes that I will never fully fill. I mean, I think I will be able to collect G.I. Joe until the day I die and not ever complete anything. I guess that just speaks volumes about the difficulty of collecting when you're located at the tip of Africa.
Well, it's less of mine though for you. I mean, think about your wallet. I mean, and this is one of the things I was really happy to hear from HCC 788 when he was on your previous episode of your podcast. He mentioned, kind of having a game plan when you collect, not just getting caught up in getting everything and you can't even enjoy it. You know what I mean? So, budget is important.
Yep.
So it's good that, if something kind of slows down the amount that you can get your hands on at one time, then it might be good in the long run because, your girlfriend won't be pissed at you for spending all the money on Joe's. You won't be pissed at yourself or something, down the line that like, damn, I could have bought this, but instead I bought, not that you'd be mad, but you know what I'm saying? Like these things pop up and sometimes you got to do your adulting and then you got to get to, being a big kid so you can balance the equation. I guess balance. And that's the theme of this whole, video, balance. It's all about balance,
Absolutely. Parameters for your collecting, so important. Because then, if you buy everything, obviously you're going to bankrupt yourself and just not enjoy the things that you have quite as much as you would if you were more focused and treasured everything perhaps that much more, because it wasn't about volume or quantity. It was about completing the things that are nearest and dearest to you. Yeah, so
Exactly.
I embraced new sculpt era Joes when they came out, but they quickly were shown up as being inferior to the old school stuff, so I went back to vintage and continued to collect and complete that run. And then the 25th anniversary stuff, this was the stuff that was going to make everything, it was going to change the game. It was going to make all your vintage Joes all of a sudden seem tacky and out of date because I went for the hype. I was all over that. When I saw the images, I mean, the best commercial I can recall was in Toy Fair magazine where they showed 1982 Snake Eyes side by side with
Mhm.
2007 Snake Eyes, and it was just night and
Exactly.
day. I was like, what?
Yeah.
These are the ultimate toys ever produced. G.I. Joe articulation, plus all the mod cons of like removable web gear, holsterable weapons, more forgiving grips in the hands, double jointed knees. I mean, it was just an absolute wet dream.
Yeah.
What soured it for me, I suppose, and this is a story that so many people in my position tell, is we can never achieve the kind of opulence and variation that we got. No, variation is not the right word because let's face it, modern era stuff has exploded. Like there are so many variations of using the same parts in different configurations. So variation is a poor choice of words, but opulence of the 80s can never be repeated.
Yeah.
So we get the most incredible figures, but we'll never get complementary vehicles. Yeah.
Exactly.
The shining moments of modern era vehicles were basically reaching back in time and bringing out an old classic and dusting it off and
Exactly.
putting it at an affordable price point and getting it out to people. I speak about the Sky Striker from the 30th anniversary, and I speak about the Eagle. Is it the Eagle? Yeah, the Eagle Hawk. Stuff like that. Old favorites that are you don't have to trawl through vintage stores and find a beat up Tomahawk anymore. No, you can buy one at retail,
It's
and that
true.
was great.
Yeah. I want to go back talking about the new era, new sculpt era.
Yeah, what was your handle on that?
There's some of those figures I loved,
Mhm.
and then there's other ones that just looked goofy, proportion wise. I know a couple of the artists that did the designs for the majority of the beginning portion of the new sculpt era, like the crazy Snake Eyes with the crazy visor. You know what I'm talking about? He had I think it was the very first new sculpt era Snake Eyes. He was all black and silver, gray. He had gray,
Were there
almost
blue highlights to him?
yeah,
And
yeah,
he had
yeah.
he had a T crotch.
No, not this. I mean after the
Okay.
original.
Right.
These are the O-ring construction ones. God, I need to look at which one I'm trying to say. But
I think a lot of us have kind of blanked that from our memory, but it did give us a very, very good visor Snake Eyes, in the same vein as V2, but it was in a
yeah,
sort of a gray coloring. He had wonderful sculpted details like little throwing knives on his chest. He was a
hmm
cool Snake Eyes. But I'm trying to recall the one that you're speaking of. So you say a friend of yours designed that? Nice.
yeah. He designed the Scarlet, that Agent Scarlet, when the one that had the figure had broad shoulders. She still was colored very much like the original, but she had the G.I. Joe on her like her bracer. She had like a forearm
Oh, I've got that
bracer.
figure. I've got that figure.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah. He
yes.
designed, and those ones I didn't mind as much. They just looked like they were wearing so much armor. So that was the thing. Actually, I just found the Snake Eyes. It's a black recolor of it's version 14.
Okay.
He is from 2002. He has the big holsters on his legs that you can't actually put anything in. And he also had like G.I. Joe going down one of his ankles. But he was all black, gray, and silver buckles and knee pads and stuff all over the place. But he came with it was the version that was in the Spy Troops animation. Did you ever see that?
I think I have this figure as well. Yep. Yep, yep.
It was a cool, update. I mean, it's when we look at him now, it's still kind of like he has elements that work and then elements that they needed to get rid of, and go full commando or go full on ninja. But when you go in between and he looks like a ninja just wearing commando gear, it kind of doesn't work as well.
Hmm. Strydent, I've got to be honest with you, man. Like, New Sculpt era G.I. Joe actually made me a core collector.
Really?
As in the core,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
because around about that era, Leonard obviously master copy artists. Um, they put out that initial wave of T-crotch guys, and
Oh yeah.
they introduced something that G.I. Joe still hasn't. Oh, no, no, wait. Yeah, G.I. Joe in modern era figures has started to embrace slightly, but it just hasn't been done nearly as well. They introduced paint washers. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, all of these Hasbro figures look like toys. Whereas these
Mhm.
guys look like they've dragged themselves through the mud of the jungles of the world. They look fantastic. They were so inviting. They were like, uh, they were the figures that you wanted to play with outside. Whereas G.I. Joe looked good, around base.
Well, I personally, and I don't know if maybe this is because a lot of people I've seen it on your channel. They always comment on the fact that you play with your figures or you review the figures out in the elements.
Hmm.
I want to put the dirt on those figures myself. Like any old like if you see one of my favorite Joes has always been what's his name, Snow Job. And I constantly put him out in the elements. If it was really cold snow, obviously I had him out there in the ice. If it was icy rain, I had him out there in there to the point where it even brittled him faster. So I had to get a couple, new ones to, like replace parts or just to, because I had completely decimated the previous one. But if you,
Yeah, extreme cold will do that to you. I have a little anecdote about that.
uh,
Inspired by G.I. Joburg's sort of toys being in their natural environment type videos, Mike Mercy, I don't know if you follow his
oh
channel,
yeah,
he
oh
uh,
yeah,
he he did a Toys Gone Wild series of episodes, and he reviewed the Snowcat out in like
yep,
Canadian negative temperatures, like sub-zero.
yep.
Uh, and he broke his snowcat. Like it got so cold that one of the fairings actually just snapped clean off, like from getting brittle.
Wow.
Yeah, so I,
It's
I feel a bit bad about that. But he says he doesn't mind. He's like, yeah, battle damage.
Yeah, I mean, and that stuff is awesome too because I tell my sons, well, I've told the older one, and he kind of is back and forth with his Joes. He really loves the 25th stuff because it mimics the cartoon, so
Mm,
that's more what he always goes for. My 4-year-old, he's just all over the place with all different types of toys. We haven't given him Joes yet because the parts are small, so we're
mhm.
waiting till he's a little bit older. But I always tell him, when your figure breaks in battle, it's like the best thing because then you have a story. If you have Batman going up against the Joker and the Batman punches Joker and his arm comes off, Batman broke the Joker's arm. You know what I mean? Like you have a story for those two figures. If you're fighting with your Joe vehicles, and somehow during a dogfight you drop one of the planes, and you're in the middle of some kind of maneuver. You wanted maybe a Rattler to shoot down a Storm Eagle or something, and it actually happens. You have that to add to the story of what happened, how that happened. This is part of your figures or your vehicle's, history.
And this is precisely why I need kids. I I play so gingerly with all the modern stuff that it
uh,
doesn't it doesn't get battle scars.
well, play
Whereas
with
if
it
I
rough.
pick up my childhood collection, which once again
Uh,
I'm very in a very fortunate position to still possess. Like I can pick up an
hmm
old O-ringer that I've had for my entire life practically, and I'm immediately connected with an entire history of battles. This
Exactly.
this this little 3 3/4 inch figurine is like a time machine to me. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
a nostalgia factor which keeps bringing me back to the O-ring stuff as well. And then modern era stuff just
Yeah.
doesn't have the same resonance, and it never will, because I'm not a child anymore. I don't get to play like I did when I was a child. Maybe it would be entirely different if I had a child of my own and was able to kind of vicariously, like, through play with him or her, hey, girls could be playing with this stuff too, vicariously kind of imbue the modern era stuff with these cool memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm still just trying to tell you why I'm a vintage guy over a modern era guy.
Like, see, this is my thing, right? Since I collect both, because you can't get the variety in vehicles outside of maybe Rise of Cobra, the variety in vehicles doesn't exist in the modern era. You have to go back and get some of the classic vehicles in order to like round out what you have. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that in my area, when I started back when Rise of Cobra came out, and there were tons of Rise of Cobra stuff all over the place. It was selling, and then they would replenish. Like the Walmart near where I live always had stuff. So I found everything that I wanted from that line within like a couple months of the movie coming out. Normally that's really difficult. It's like Hasbro was in a different place back then. They were like, let's just force feed this to everybody, whether they want it or not. And, we'll see what happens. And, there's still vehicles that I got from Rise of Cobra that were kind of meh. And then I went back and I got the original one, and I see the things that they changed. But the overall point that I'm getting at is just that you have to get vintage vehicles for your, collection if you want to have variety in what you're collecting. If you want to have variety in your motor pool, variety in your Air Force, variety in your naval force, you need to have some vintage and some modern, or just go all vintage, because you can just everything exists. And I remember you saying one time that some figures don't look cool next to certain vehicles, and I agree. There are.
You preempt me. That is exactly what I was going to talk about now. But please continue.
Well, like there's some vehicles like what is it? The Desert Fox. I've never liked that. I think that's what it's called, the Desert Fox. It's a six-wheeled Jeep. I was never a fan of the design anyway. It just looked plain. Most of the Battle Force 2000 stuff is like that. For me, it's also plain, and so when I put it next to a modern era, figure, it kind of looks like a cosplay vehicle or something. You know what I mean? Like a cheap special effects something or other. I know some people like it, but it reminds me of those. Like, have you ever seen the movie Megaforce 2000? It's
I keep
really
meaning
bad.
to, man. Yeah,
You know
no, look, it's been suggested to me a number of times. I need to track it down.
Yeah, man, it's the cheese that I'm talking about, that some of these vehicles kind of inspire memories of, because I was big into B movies growing up. So I watched
with a
all
name
that
like
kind of
Megaforce, I mean, come on. Megaforce. Jeez.
Oh my God. And the movie does not disappoint in the cheese factor. It's so bad. But there's a lot of vehicles that just have crap. It's after Mad Max, so everybody wanted a piece of that kind of action. So all the design is just hammer all kinds of crap onto a cheap, chassis of a vehicle, and the vehicles just look ridiculous. And there's some Joe vehicles and some Cobra vehicles that we have to admit, they don't have the same oomph that like some of the more memorable ones do. But there also are some vehicles that we don't hear people talk about much in the community. Like, you love the X-Wing.
Oh, the Skystorm. Yeah.
That thing is dope. I was like, isn't it called? It's called the X-Wing, the Skystorm X-Wing chopper, right?
Very good. Yep,
Something.
that is exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, no one talks about it, and I always thought it was cool. I'm like, it's kind of like Airwolf. Come on, guys, everybody watched Airwolf. What's going on? No one talks about it. It's only the Sky Striker, the Fang, the Awe Striker, like the same vehicles, and I'm like, there's a lot out there. I think maybe it's just that a lot of people haven't been exposed to all of it, so they grab onto the spot that they grab onto, and then that's it. But let's continue on this vehicle thing. I want to hear what you were going to say. My bad.
Well, no, not your bad at all, man. Great talking points in there. We'll hopefully unpack some of them. But, yeah, look, vehicles are the crux of the matter for me. And this is a problem that it speaks to my personality, perhaps, that I am
Hmm.
almost obsessive compulsive about not mixing. So I've created these distinct walls. It's serious, man. Like, I cannot put a modern era figure on a vintage vehicle. There's just a feel that is problematic to me. The vehicles
Yeah.
that I find do work with the modern era figures that aren't specifically geared toward modern era figures are the direct to consumer vehicles and the new sculpt era vehicles. For instance, like I display my modern era guys manning the Rhino, which has
Uh
very,
huh.
even by their own admission, like re-released with modern era guys. I mean, they
Yeah.
put out the green, the sort of the blue Rhino with the green missiles. Well, I've got the older one, the black one with the yellow
Black
missiles.
one.
I've also
Yeah.
got, in complement to that, is the Rolling Operations Command Center.
I'm still
Fantastic
trying to get
vehicle.
one of those. I love that thing. I
It's a
want one.
goodie, but I believe it is the demand is high. I just fortunately, I mean, I got in at the ground floor. I was, as I say, I never stopped collecting. So when DTC was all the rage, I got one of everything.
Yeah.
It is wonderful, and it is a vehicle that doesn't look right when it's manned by vintage figures. It's funny like
You think
that.
so?
I think so. Look, dude, my walls go both ways. It keeps vintage era figures out of vehicles that would otherwise accommodate them. I cannot.
Huh.
It's got to do with the plastic quality, like the Rock and the Rhino and the Desert Attack Chopper or the Night Attack Chopper or the Crimson Attack Chopper, whichever version you gravitate towards. The plastic has a glossier feel,
Yeah.
whereas the vintage plastic was that very brittle, hard. I mean, it was fantastic for creating really sharp sculpt details, but equally, more easily
Yeah.
broken
It's
than the sort of more forgiving later plastic that was used. So yeah, I look back
That's
over my
true.
shoulder and I'm like, these are the vehicles that make sense to me as modern era vehicles. It also doesn't hurt that they have a different design aesthetic. Like the Rock and the
Yeah.
Rhino, yeah, I suppose there's an alien resonance, but there's also like, I don't know, kind of a futuristic
Yeah.
feel.
Like a Halo vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely that. It's very informed by, I suppose, video game designs, stuff like that. Um, whereas vintage G.I. Joe was very informed by real vehicles and
Exactly. Because
and equipment.
yeah, there was no video game concept art back then for these kind
Mm.
of things. There was just the concept
Military
art,
concept art.
military concept vehicles. Because yeah,
Sure.
like 95% of the early Joe vehicles were based on concept vehicles. Stuff that either was going to exist or did exist and it was a one-off and it never went anywhere.
So which vintage vehicles do not look good with modern era guys hanging off of them? Play
Let's
devil's
see.
advocate for me.
Let's see. The RVP looks terrible with modern guys. The Desert Fox looks terrible.
Oh, that's a
The
pity.
Bat.
Vintage guys slouch way too low in the seat. I can only imagine like a, modern era figure with sort of a slightly taller upper body
Yeah,
would be able to
that's
look over
true.
the dashboard.
But yeah, he probably would work, but
Yeah.
like it's just, detail wise, you have this super detailed figure. I mean, I guess it would depend on the figure. If you
Mm.
had 25th guys, maybe they would look okay. But I mean, when you get past 25th, your Rise of Cobra, your, Resolute, your Pursuit of Cobra, your 30th and your 50th, maybe not. But
Paul customized a Desert Fox for me, gave it a very cool, detailed paint job. And not
huh,
a technical paint job, more like a weathering, broken
yeah,
down, that kind of detail. And
I hear he's
I think
master
the
at that.
vehicle, because of its sort of smooth, clean lines, lends itself to a really spiffy paint job that can kind of mess up the lines a bit. Put a little bit of rust or
Exactly.
weathering and scoring in places. And with that kind of detailing, yeah, man, I think it does start to shine for your modern era
Yeah.
stuff.
I could see
So
that. I could see that. Maybe.
bad example, Strydent. No,
Yeah,
I'm
I could
kidding.
go. I can go in. I got more like the Recon Sled. I've never liked that vehicle that much as it is, but it looks weird
Sure.
with a modern era dude looking down at the floor, laying down in this thing. It just doesn't look right.
What would you say to something like the Warthog, which I think
Oh, that thing's awesome.
everyone who's a fan of G.I. Joe is a fan of the Warthog. It's one of those vehicles that
Oh
just can
yeah.
do no wrong. Sort of latter 80s vehicle that could mesh
Oh
very
yeah.
well with the sort of the original Green Team.
That one
But
works even with the core. Like you can fit a bunch of guys in there. It's land. It's aquatic. It's a lot of firepower. Because it's got some decent sized missiles and you've got some guns. I think it's a cool looking vehicle, and it almost it's just enough detail and just plain enough that it could work for your. You might even be able to throw, and this might be pushing it, but you might be able to throw your some Elite Forces, those BBI Elite Force figures, even though
oh
I
yeah,
think they're some of the worst figures out there, because every one I've ever bought broke like out of the package. As I'm popping them out of the blister, head pops off, arm pops off. I'm like, what is it with these guys,
damn.
Especially for the price. But they might even look good in that because it looks like a real world, it is based on a real world APC. So I think it could work.
My concern is always with the increased scaling of modern era figures. Like if you start putting your heavies on there, like Leatherneck, Gung Ho, Roadblock, it's gonna start making the vehicle look diminutive. It's gonna start making it look like a kiddie cart. That's always been my fear, I guess.
It depends because the scale on this vehicle was huge, even for the modern. I mean the vintage era figures.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't realize how big it was because for a long time I had never seen it. I'd only seen it on eBay with pictures, and I'd seen pictures of it online and I'd never seen it in person. And then, at one of the conventions we were at, well after I it's got the fire trucks running
Oh, I
out.
thought it was the cops after you, dude. Come on, man. You
No,
gotta stop
I
holding up Toys R Us. They're bankrupt
man.
as it is.
No, I live an old man's life, man. I keep things real calm and simple. I'm like Guile said, I go home and I'm a family man. That's it. Um, but yeah, I had never seen it next to actual Joe's, and then when I finally did see it next to actual Joe's, I was like, wow, this thing is huge. Like it looks stubby and it looks short and blocky, but yeah, you can fit big guys in there. I mean, like I've seen people sell it with that custom. There's a custom conversion kit for the very first wave retaliation roadblock to turn him into Sergeant Slaughter. I actually did it, and
What?
I'm gonna review that. Have you ever seen it?
No. Cool.
Really?
Wow.
And he even comes with a duffel bag. It's like,
Yeah, man.
wow.
So I imagine it's trying to emulate his appearance in Marvel Comics. Doesn't he have a duffel bag?
Exactly.
Sweet.
He had a duffel bag even in the animation in the movie. Remember when he was holding what's his name, Falcon's duffel bag. Remember? It's good though, man. It's really good. I mean, and he's got the height and he's got the the shape to look more like what we think of if you've seen Sergeant Slaughter in G.I. Joe animation. So yeah, him standing next to Roadblock and standing next to Repeater and Leatherneck in that, and I've actually seen it sold with this conversion kit, kitted up Sergeant Slaughter. He still looks fine, and the scale doesn't feel off. And I know there's people who will nitpick because maybe they've been inside a real one, but I mean, it at the end of the day, it is a toy. So some of the nitpicks are just nitpicks. You know what I mean? Like there's a point where you have to be like, you have to suspend your disbelief because you're gonna play with this thing. It's not like you're going to it's going to really go into battle on its own. You know what I mean? And you need maximum efficiency for, this vehicle to perform in the battlefield. It's
True.
more like it needs to emulate what it needs to emulate. That's kind of why, I've done in the video I did about what I would change if I was in charge of the Joe line. I hate the fact that there's so many armored personnel carriers that don't really fit that many guys. Like, what's the point? They should at least fit maybe half of the amount that they really would fit, if you could. If it fits 50, 25 might be pushing it, but can you get it close? You know what I mean? There's Chap May vehicles that do it, and the old APC fit a ton of Joes in it.
Sure.
So,
oh yeah, it was a carry case. Though, if there are critics of the Warthog being cramped, I don't think there are people that have actually been in an armored fighting vehicle, because, let's face it, even if it is for personnel, it's hella cramped. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. You're in there, shoulder to shoulder, knees to knees.
Yep, that's everything, military grade as far as vehicles go. I mean, from your aircraft carriers to subs to, Jeeps to Humvees to whatever, they're built, form follows function, and that's it. It's not about the comfort. There's no comfort. No bucket seats in these Humvees. No, you know what I mean? It's 100% functionality. There's packs everywhere for, ammunition, for, medical kits and all kinds of stuff. It's not about you being comfortable. It's about you getting from point A to point B in the best condition, that you can get there in.
And in that vein, modern era figures work even better in something like the Warthog because they're that much more cramped. Fair point. I take it back. The Warthog does work. It does not look diminutive as a result. Yeah, man. Okay. Tick that box.
But yeah, I don't know. There's some Destro, man, the Demon, all those Iron Grenadier vehicles. Well, the AGP not so much. That looked cool with modern Iron Grenadiers in it, but the Demon looks weird with modern guys, especially if they're visible, like hanging off of it or standing up on the pegs. I mean, even though they can't really stand on the pegs, but I mean, standing outside on the outside of the vehicle, they look weird. I don't know, because the design just looks like a hot mess. I don't know. I never understood that one. And the General's another one. The guy I bought the Defiant from was trying to sell me a complete General, and I was like, yeah, I'm not a fan of the General. And he's like, dude, I'm gonna sell it to you for like, a ridiculous price. He was trying to sell it for pretty cheap, and I was kind of like, I kind of want to do it, but at the same time, I know I'm not going to even play with it because it just looks like an elevator on wheels or a
come on,
stage.
Man. Do it, review it, and then send it on to Africa, and I will roll it through the desert, and the audience will applaud loudly as they see the General in the only environment that can support a vehicle of that width.
Exactly. Yeah, it just seems weird and cumbersome, and it doesn't feel like something that would survive in battle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like
it's been requested, so really? I suggest you revisit that seller, man. Come on. The internet needs a review of the General, a good one.
Yeah,
I think there are some.
There's a lot of them out there.
But we won't pass judgments on our fellow YouTubers. We're just gonna do our own. Come on, Strydent.
That's the nice way of putting it.
I'll pay you what you paid for it, so it can be like, third hand, and you're not out of pocket.
Hey, I'll see if I can get in touch with them, man. Cool. I'll see. Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I bought the Defiant 2 years ago, something like that.
As much as that.
So I'll see.
Oh, jeez, then it's gone, man. I'm sure it's gone. Damn.
Yeah. It's possible. It's possible. He comes in. I mean, dude had 5 Defiants. He just I think he's one of those because he said he was trying to customize it for some type of Transformers something or other. I was like, the Defiant of all the things you could customize for Transformers, like that's like sacrilege. Like
it's been done, but like, I don't know if I can get behind that. Maybe if there's something materially wrong with it, like it's seen a lot of sun damage, so putting on a custom paint job couldn't hurt it. Or, yeah, no,
Exactly.
if there's something wrong with it, cool. But, like, a fair to good condition Defiant, don't touch that thing, man.
Oh
It's
yeah.
toy history.
Exactly. It's weird because I told people, I said it in the video, that was a vehicle. I remember my brother and I looking at like the service merchandise catalog or the Toys R Us catalog, one of them, and we're like talking about what we want to do when we finally get it, if we ever get it. You know, we're like, oh, this Christmas we won't ask for anything. Neither of us will ask for anything except for that.
Oh,
So,
man. I take it didn't work. You're breaking my heart.
yeah, it didn't work. But, you know, eventually I got it. You know, patience pays off. It takes a while. You got to develop the patience, but it does pay off, especially when you're collecting, you know?
Well, I had sworn off all possibility of ever getting it. It was just too big, too cumbersome, too fragile to ever get into this country. And, oh, good opportunity to say this. I'll probably mention it in one of the more sort of, I suppose, formal G.I. Joburg podcast releases, but I didn't mention in our 100th episode that the man responsible for putting the insurance claim together on our damaged Defiant, and the guy who agreed, the crazy guy who agreed to ship it to me in the first place, should not go unnamed. His name is Ronald Hoff, and he is a frickin' legend. G.I. Joburg salutes this man. He got us our Defiant, and through his persistence with the Netherlands post office, we basically got it for free. Because it came,
awesome.
it arrived damaged. We managed to mount a successful insurance claim, and yeah, as I say, thanks to Ronald's persistence, we won big time, big time. So thank you, Ronald.
That's a huge get. So thank you, Ronald. It's awesome to see. It's always awesome when you see the community kind of, you know, come together, or people in the community come together and help each other. Because I always say, and I got to a point with this community thing where I get annoyed at that phrase, because there are pockets where people actually, you know, it's like an extension of our childhood. You know, when we were kids, if you were on the playground and you had a G.I. Joe and I had a G.I. Joe, we're friends because we're going to be playing G.I. Joe at recess or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's just as simple as it was. Or any toys, usually. If you had He-Man and I had He-Man stuff, we're going to play because we both love He-Man. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But, like, you see in the communities a lot of times it's like this dick measuring contest. And it doesn't feel as genuine as it once did. And we're older now, so we should know better. We should be able to just, you know, reminisce and, you know, kind of vibe on this thing that we love, and not spend so much time like I have, you know, 50 Marvel Legends Deadpools and you have none. You know what I mean? Or I have, you know, I have I have 2 Defiants and 3 Terradromes, and you don't even have any. And like, it usually comes up in conversation like that. And that always gets on my nerves, because it's like, you don't have to be like that. You know, you can either point me in the direction of one, you know, or something, or hold back what you want to say and post the picture some other time, not at the moment that someone is lamenting over missing out on something, or, you know what I mean, or a broken, like when you talked about the gantry doors break, you had a lot of people who sympathized, but you had a lot of people like, look, mine is pristine. And I'm like, come on, like, why? You don't need to do that. That's so unnecessary.
Yeah, jeez. Sobbing emoticon right there.
Man,
Rub it in my face, asshole.
I felt that in my chest when I saw your video and you talked about it as you're taking it out, and I see it come out in a chunk. I'm like, oh my god! Like, you know, like the terrible
it big time. We downplayed it big time so that we didn't put a sort of negative spin on the video. But inside I was dying.
I bet
it was going to basically terminate my collecting completely. You know, I was like,
really?
I was like, what's the point? You know, like, it is so prohibitive. Essentially, thanks to postage, you're buying everything twice. And that's for the lowest rung of postage, where, you know, half the time the item is on a conveyor belt and being like sort of lifted and dropped without any regard to like fragile stickers or this way up, any of that. So, you know, I mean, you could have things at 10 times the cost personally couriered
Yeah.
to you, but it's still no guarantee. So I was like, I just threw my hands up and I was like, I'm done. I'm out. Forget it. Forget it. Any toys
Well,
I buy in future will be bought brick and mortar style in the flesh because this just sucks.
yeah.
Which basically means like the only toys I'd ever buy are toys that I buy when I am overseas, because we
Yeah.
get shit all down here.
But you got your tomahawk and stuff down there, right?
Wow, you really do your homework, man. Okay, the tomahawk. I found, for those of you guys who are hearing this for the first time, all 5 of you, because I tell this story often, I found a mint in sealed box tomahawk, like in 2010, in this dusty old toy shop in Cape Town. And
Insanity.
it's rare enough to happen anywhere in the world, the States included. But for that to
Yeah.
happen here, I mean, just to put things in perspective, the Tomahawk wasn't released here. No one had it.
Yeah.
It didn't go on sale here at all. So this must have been stock that was in a distributor's warehouse as like a sort of I suppose a tester or a sample that they brought in to show the execs, like, will we order this item? And they were like, nah, too big, it won't sell, blah, blah, blah. So this is a one-of-a-kind sealed tomahawk, and I'm like, what were the chances that it found its way onto a shelf and right in front of the nose of a guy who absolutely treasures this stuff? I mean, it's no secret that the Tomahawk is my favorite G.I. Joe vehicle of all time.
Really? Of all time?
Of all time. Cannot be beat.
Even over the Defiant?
They operate in different leagues, but a Tomahawk you can adapt to pretty much every operation that G.I. Joe is on. You know, you can have
What about,
Tomahawks
like,
buzzing around the Defiant as just kind of patrol aircraft. I mean, like, but it doesn't work the other way around. You know, you can't have the Defiant kind of assist your guys when they're moving in on a target location. It's like, yeah, no, that thing's just gonna stay in orbit and just do its thing in space.
What is it? What do they call that? The orbital drop? You know how they slingshot from one side of the globe to the next and then drop the person, you know, at ridiculous, it's like low orbit, but they drop the person from, you know what I'm talking about, right?
That is why G.I. Joe needs Targats, like on the Joe side. Like, what? It just occurred to me, man, like, Destro's got these guys who they drop from low orbit, but he doesn't have a ship.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe has a spacecraft, but they don't have any guys that they can throw out of the airlock door. Come on.
Have skydive.
Oh, the modern era skydive, you mean? You see, man, I'm seeing these things in boxes.
There was a prototype they did, Rise of Cobra Ripcord, where he had the gear with the wings and the thrusters and the big pressurized helmet, and essentially he looked like a Halo jumper on steroids with like a jetpack with wings.
Well, similar to Skydive, right?
Yeah, it was exactly Skydive, just different colors and Ripcord's head. I'm still trying to. That's one of the ones I'm trying to get. I still have Skydive. I have 2 of them so that I could put Ripcord's head on one of those bodies. You know.
Good idea. I have a glut of Rise of Cobra Dukes, so I put Channing Tatum's head on that body. Don't judge. I just needed to give it some character because the balaclava head, if you can get away from that, that's always necessary, because that just... Who is Skydive? He's another guy in the balaclava. It's like, come on, give him a face. And since Channing Tatum will never be Duke for me, he can be Skydive.
Yeah. that makes sense, actually. Yeah, I made Channing Tatum almost all of my green shirts. So, like, every bit of my infantry or my basic soldiers are just Channing Tatum. Like, I think Mal's one of them. Channing Tatum is one of them. The secondary head from the Retaliation Joe Trooper, that's another one.
Okay.
But
I hope you switched it up a little bit, like take a little felt tip pen and, like, pencil in a little moustache or a little goatee, a little soul patch, like, oh, it's Channing Tatum with with some sideburns.
That's exactly what I did. I even repainted some of the hair in some cases. And, yeah.
Well, that's something that I find modern era construction lends itself to more than the O-ring stuff,
Yeah,
because the bodies can often be blank slates. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Whereas,
Yeah.
look, we've all done it because the O-ring construction lends itself to customizing so easily. Just unscrew the back and pop him apart. Easy. So
Yeah.
we've all mixed and matched parts, but I don't know, man. I don't want to cast aspersions on like a whole section of the community here, but like customizing with O-ring is, I, I mean, do you buy it? I don't know.
The vintage ones, not so much, but the
Yeah.
modern, the sculpt era ones, I think you can make some dope customs with them
Okay.
because the gear is all there. It's just you have to find the right ones. You oftentimes you're gonna have to repaint something, but the
Hmm.
gear, that's the important thing, and I think that's why the modern era ones kind of eclipse the vintage figures when it comes to customizing, is because most of them start with BDUs and then you just build up from there.
Yeah. Web gear is so important. The removable sort
Exactly.
of rubber goods. Yeah. Yeah. Customizing with old school guys. Yeah,
It can
look,
work.
it has its place. It definitely does. I
Yeah.
saw some cool, like freaky wrestler dudes, just like shirtless guys using Roadblock's body. No, not Roadblock, Road Pig's body,
Yeah.
like Mindbender's head, and Crystal Ball's head not Balrog, the Cobra boxer.
Oh, big boa.
Big boa, exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the guy repainted Crystal Ball's head with like a Joker face. I was like, that's brilliant. That is
Yeah, that is.
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So it does have its place, but
Yeah.
it's very niche. It's or niche, as you fine folks would say. Do you say niche? I say niche.
Yeah. I say niche.
Ah, America.
It's one of the few things that like I was kind of my grandmother is a school teacher. She's from my family half is from British Guyana, the other half is from Brazil. So
Hmm.
my grandmother taught us the Queen's English, which is why we don't have strong Jersey or New York accents. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I
Hmm.
don't have the accent like thick like you see on television. Most people don't. That's kind of a television thing, but it's not bad. But if I get into a conversation with someone from New York with the accent, slowly it starts slipping out. Water and talking and your father and your mother, and it sounds. You know what I mean? I'll catch myself because she drilled it into us. Like, no, that's not how you pronounce it. It's pronounced like this. You pronounce all the letters. So yeah, there's some things and there's some phrases and some words that have like the alternate pronunciation depending on where you're from in the world. That we learned it that way, but over time you just kind of default to the thing you hear more often. So yeah, niche is one of those words. And what's another one? A
Aluminum.
homage.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
homage.
yeah, homage. We don't say homage like a lot of people do. It's a homage or homage. Same thing
Hmm.
with yeah, aluminum is one. My friend Matt, he lives in the UK, and he always cracks us up with aluminium. And I'm like, where are you getting?
That is kind of anomalous, I must say.
But yeah, it's fun. I love that stuff though. I love the differences. This
The
is one of the reasons why.
nuances.
Yes, nuances exactly. Like this is why it's so awesome meeting folks in this, that do this thing we do, and sharing your stories, and then hearing that something you thought you were doing and you were so like, original, is the something that someone had the exact same idea on the complete opposite end of the world. You know what I mean? And it's like, how did you have this idea that I had? You know what I mean? You think you're exclusive, and it's like, damn. So we all are thinking, in the same vein with these particular things, which is it's awesome to me. I like when that happens, and I wish more of it happened. That's why I'm
Well, you
always
find your
up for,
soulmate like that,
you
man.
know,
It's like, what? You thought Storm Shadow was gonna betray Cobra too? Wow. We need to be together. I mean, to hell with any kind of dating app or anything, like, or 40 questions to find your true match. Like, it just has to come down to, did you play with G.I. Joe the way I play with G.I. Joe? Yeah, when it was that easy. We need more girls in this hobby. That's what we need.
Yeah, it's weird.
Calm the waters.
Yeah, there's been a handful, and when I go to conventions, I meet handfuls of like couples where both of them collected, but it's rare. It's very rare that like on any of these sites, it's just a bunch of girls specifically that got into it as hardcore as we did. I know girls who played with Joes because their brothers had them, but they didn't get into it like us. I know a lot of girls who played with the 12-inch Joes because they were superior to Ken. So,
and they had removable clothing. I mean, come on. The stereotypes unfortunately sometimes ring true. Like, why does my niece love dolls so much? Because she can remove and replace the clothing ad infinitum. Like, that is the play pattern that she just repeats over and over again. It's like, we got to get undressed to go to bed. We got to get dressed to go to school. We got to get undressed to go to bed. Like, what do we actually play out what happens at school? No, we just seem to be like constantly undressing and getting dressed again. Okay.
That works, right?
Well, yeah. No. But I hate to generalize. Must come off sounding like some kind of chauvinist. Maybe I am.
No. But I mean, this is an experience. It's something you've seen. You know what I mean? You're not generalizing because
public forum, man. We're being judged on everything we say. My goodness.
I know, right?
So, what is the take home, Strydent? How do we harmonize our split hobby, our split community? I mean, we can all agree G.I.Joe is the greatest toy line ever created, but it seems like G.I.Joe is now two distinct toy lines.
Well, I think what has to happen is more people need to just get a feel for everything that's out there. I mean, now you have things like yojo.com, you have 3D Joes, you have HisTank's really cool database, and you can look at all the stuff that's pretty much ever been released. You got Battle Lines, you've got Just Joes, you've got a lot of databases to check out what's out there. You can even go watch the old commercials. I mean, YouTube's got probably all of them. You can see what's out there, and then people need to experiment and go out and just if you like the look of something, screw the fact that everybody says the Sky Striker is the greatest plane in Joe whatever. It's not. Maybe for a bunch of people it is, but it's not. There's so many other planes that you could experiment and go play with and see how it feels for you, instead of basing your whole take home on what a whole bunch of other people say. Look at how stuff is displayed. If a person buys it, keeps it in the box and puts it up and then tells you on a forum, this is the greatest, blah, 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 they don't know what they're talking about. They didn't experience it. G.I. Joe is a line, it's toys in the best sense. You have to experience them. It's not about what people say. It's what you do with it. It's what I do that defines me. It's what goes...
Okay, Katie Holmes.
That's what they do. But no, it's what you do with them is what's important. You got to see the thing in person, fit a bunch of your favorite Joes on it, and see how it works. I got the Dragonhawk from Sigma 6, and I wanted the thing for years. There's a video that a fellow Joe collector, goodness, I'm sorry that his name is escaping me right now, but he did this video back when Sigma 6 was on television, and he got that vehicle. He was all the way in the Philippines, and I was friends with him on the old Joe community on Facebook. The video was awesome, and I'm like, I have to have that thing. I finally got it, and then I can't play with it. It's got one cockpit that I can fit a modern guy or even a vintage guy in, and then the other cockpit is for the smaller Sigma 6 figures, and I can't really do anything else with it. There's no room. There's no handles for the guys to hang on, or for you to put lines so that they could rappel from the thing. The box is tiny, so it's one of those things that it would become. I mean, you could use it as a support vehicle, or it becomes a long-term custom project. Where you're trying to make it fit. But the only reason why I know is because I actually went out and got the thing, I right now I've been thinking of using it as something to trade for something else that I might be looking for, But it's one of those things. It's an awesome vehicle. It looks awesome. If I had a whole bunch of smaller figures, it probably would be the bomb. But right now, this is sitting there because I can't really do anything with it because I can't fit a lot of my guys in there.
But you've got a good stand-in for that vehicle, don't you? I seem to recall in one of your videos you showcased this incredible toy which I'd never seen before. It was like also kind of a mech slash aircraft, helicopter.
Yeah.
Was it from True Heroes?
Yeah, it's from True Hero. They had this line called Laser. It was like land, air, sea, something else. I can't remember, robot or something. It's something cheesy like that. But the vehicle reminded me of that. That's why I got it. And it has lights and sounds. It's got VTOL capabilities, but they're on wings that can splay backwards and move outward to the sides. And then it has these bug legs to clamp vehicles, so it can transport like a trooper transport from point A to point B. And I think there was a transport in that line. I've been trying to get a hold of it, but it's kind of it was very open and there was no armor. So essentially it was just a kill box where you're just sitting there and wait to die if you get to, on your way.
It's basically for driving from, the headquarters to the landing strip where you take the plane, basically. Exactly. Only for use around base. But that was a fascinating toy, man, and I'd never seen that before. If anyone of our listeners are scratching their heads at this point, check out Strydent's Cobra Motor Pool video from about 2014. It's a good watch. And it gives you a good sense of what this man's all about in terms of just integrating toys from disparate different lines. But, like, if you can think of a cool backstory, there's absolutely no limitation on what you can do.
Exactly.
Except scale. So the Dragonhawk, you can't do much with that. And I think scale was what taught me how to be a toy snob in the first place. Like, I used to only play with Transformers that conceivably held the same scale. So I'd need large-ish Decepticon jets to integrate with small Autobot cars. It didn't work the other way around. Yeah, man. Tragic. Tragic. I threw these walls up left, right, and center. I no longer collect any other scale other than 3 3/4 inch. So when Marvel Universe started out, I was in heaven, man. I was able to get a full team of X-Men, Avengers, X-Force in the G.I. Joe scale because I wanted Captain America to lead the Joes on a mission, or I just wanted my world to all be the same size as G.I. Joe and Star Wars. Fortunately, it became the dominant scale recently. But as I said, it created these divisions, and that's why I cannot have like my modern era, like my movie toys from Captain America: Civil War integrate with vintage O-ring G.I. Joes. They don't play well. What do I do, man?
I'm telling you, one day you just need to throw them all together and just see what happens. Have a Royal Rumble.
have some offspring. I think that will dislodge the carrot from my ass. That's like kids don't see that. Oh, this guy has more detailed paint apps, and this guy has a different construction, and this guy is made from different plastic, and like.
Yeah, exactly. See, for us, and this might be the big thing. We were never rich, but we weren't poor. My parents were like, we would get figures maybe for your birthday and Christmas and maybe for a surprise at some random time, just because. So we didn't ever have, growing up, entire collections of anything. So, we had a little bit of Ninja Turtles, a little bit of Captain Power, a little bit of G.I. Joe, a little bit of Cops. And we had we're going to play, we got to use what we got, You might have a vehicle from freaking RoboCop and the Ultra Police, but you might have all the other police guys are your Cops figures, which means, the RoboCop guys were like a little bit 5 inches or under, just a little bit. And the Cops figures were like a little over 5 inches, almost 6. So they were the big buff guys, and they're your police. So you got to pretend drive in that police car from, you know what I mean, from what you call it, because that's what you had. So I didn't develop the the walls like you
divisions.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, like, with Marvel Select, I see this and it boggles my mind. Marvel Select puts out superior figures to Marvel Legend in a lot of areas other than maybe articulation, and even in some cases they do just as good articulation, but their paint jobs and their sculpts blow the Marvel Legends stuff out the water. Yet the collector community completely shits all over the Marvel Select stuff, and they all go for the very plain, very blah, Marvel Legends things. And I'm just like, and it's all because of the scale. And I just can't limit myself. Like the vehicle that I showed you guys, the Moro dropship for my team, it's a Power Rangers vehicle, which means it's a mech. It's pieces that form a Megazord, but it's like I don't know, 5 inches tall and maybe 8 inches wide. Obviously, I can't fit Joe's in there, but like through the power of Photoshop and my imagination, I'm gonna fit people in there. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be where they house all their gear and stuff. And for the sake of little stories that I'll put together, it'll take on that role. So, like, growing up, we just used our imagination to fill in the blanks for a lot of things. So we're not as hard on what we get as some collectors are. You know what I mean? I think if you were able to get all that stuff, and tailor your collection, then if you continue and you never stopped and you're still able to continue that, I could see how you would grow up with almost tunnel vision to all the other stuff, because you've always been able to maintain that one scale, that one look, the one style across everything. Like, say you only collected Joe's and Star Wars. I could totally see how you could shun everything else, because nothing else had that level of compatibility between the vehicles and the figures, So you would only look for things that have that compatibility. I could see how that would happen. But I just think, like, if it works for you and you can continue it like that and it doesn't bother you, continue, do it. It works for you. But if there's things outside of that you want to kind of jump into, and you want to see how this would look if your Joes took on, the AT-AT from, Star Wars, or a Megazord or something, just something out there. Do it, and just see how it works for you, It's all in fun. It's not like somebody, the scale police is going to knock on your door and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Cut that out. Like, you're cool. You're completely cool. It's all imagination based, and that's the thing. People need to just give in. Don't be an adult in this area, because as adults we have all those walls and all these defining attributes to everything. Everything has to be in its place, and it has to work at this time, and it has to, it has a specific function, and blah blah blah. And it's something that you're taught. You're taught to kind of let go of your kind of childish imagination and childish curiousness, and just be an adult where everything is logic all the time. You can be logical and stuff, but you can also turn that off and or try to, and just enjoy it.
Strydent, I wish it were that simple. I mean, looking back, even as a child, I would get my buddies round, and then the first question would be, "So what should we play, guys? Should we play G.I. Joe, Transformers, superheroes, or should we read comics?"
Hey,
Read comics was always the last pick on the list. I mean, no one really wanted to come over and just read. Are you kidding? So
yeah.
we would. I guess I am to blame. I imposed these divisions, and we never had a situation where we had the G.I. Joes team up with the Transformers. It was like one or the other, and I still haven't been able to let that go. And I guess that's why I am so OCD about these divisions now. And it doesn't help the fact that it's a resource scarce situation. I can't just go out and buy a trolley full of like varied toys. It has to be a very calculated move to price something online, find a seller willing to ship out here, work up a shipping quote, and then bite down hard on something while, I fire it off from my credit card across the
Yeah.
ether. So these divisions have only become stronger. Hopefully that's gone some way to explain why I am such a purist and why I view these things as so black and white, night and day, vintage, modern era. But that's not to be prescriptive, and certainly does not speak for the rest of the G.I. Joburg team. Paul is a hot mess of scales, of styles, of manufacturers. He's got
Yeah.
equal parts sort of Japanese toys to American toys. And yeah, he regularly mixes up modern era with vintage, with Power Team Elite, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
No holds barred, man. So please don't let me be a Scrooge and ruin anyone's fun. But this is, I suppose, my way of explaining who I am and why I collect a certain way, and I hope I haven't ruffled anyone's tail feathers by saying inflammatory things like, yeah, I don't want no modern era toys on my vintage vehicles. But you're in the company of friends. Strydent is an avid fan and supporter of notions of mixing this stuff up. So, bam.
Yeah. I mean,
Pick
it's
your
always
poison.
fun. True.
Yeah, I think that's my take home, man. It is awful fun, and it is, in many respects, like viewing these things through the eyes of a child again.
Yeah.
Important not to lose sight of that.
So let me ask you this then. What do you think about some of the vehicles from the modern era in comparison to some of the ones in the the vintage era? Like the Rhino that you brought up. I love that vehicle. It's one of my favorites ever in the entire line just because of the three obvious functions. It just seems like almost an all-purpose attack vehicle. You know what I mean? Like it's not very limited. And it was the first vehicle I got when I started collecting Rise of Cobra, so I was able to, and it was a calculated effort too, because I wanted to have a place to put all my guys. So at the time, I had about 6 or 7, I had the main cast of the movie, and I was able to fit everybody plus Metalhead, or Cannonball, I think that's what he's called, who's driving the thing. And I was completely happy because I'm like, wow, it's an APC, it's a helicopter, and it's a freaking armored, like Batmobile type deal. I had no problems with it. I mean, different configurations with the weapons. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about it in comparison to vintage?
Well, it definitely has a different look and feel to vintage toys, which immediately casts it for me as a modern era compatible vehicle. The fact that the cockpit on the helicopter is spacious, I mean, you could put old Wild Bill in there. And Wild Bill is a rather tall 25th anniversary figure. He's not going to work in a Dragonfly. Although I've seen some people manage to kind of shoehorn him in there. It doesn't look like a comfortable fit. The vintage Dragonfly is rather unforgiving, even for vintage figures. So that chopper is excellent. It is a fantastic chopper. In fact, I think I used to use it as like Batman's stealth chopper. Like I imagine that somehow was something that Batman would have acquired. No need to paint it black. It already is. And it has a kind of a Batman aesthetic with that very like stealth fighter canopy. Yeah, man, I have no trouble casting that as a modern era vehicle, and it perfectly ties into Rise of Cobra with the sort of the black body armor look that film gave us. In fact, I'd say, absolutely, that is the era that it makes the most sense with. So you were bang on the money there. I'm not so sure about Cannonball with the sort of light gray pants and yellow highlights.
I think the version I have is the green and with the leather jacket. And he's got like...
of course, he's a modern era figure. I was thinking of the DTC one that we got.
Yeah,
I have an embarrassing story about the Rhino. I totally did not realize that it had a Springfire missile launcher.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah, the one that fires the single missile.
Uh-huh.
So when I got the missile, just sort of like loose, I found it in my room somewhere, and I was like, this missile must belong to some miscellaneous toy that I don't own anymore. I threw it out What an idiot. I actually threw it in the trash.
No,
I,
no. You're supposed to
so
throw it in your box of shit, or the box of random shit, you know?
I don't know what went through my head at that point. I was like, some kids have been here, they'd left their missile behind, or something like that. I was like, I had this moment of madness. That's the only way I can explain it. I literally lost my mind for 5 minutes and threw out this missile. What a
Wow.
prize idiot. So yeah, my Rhino is now incomplete, sadly, and they are in short supply these days. So if anyone has a original yellow DTC Rhino missile that they, just happen to have spare, send it my way.
Yeah, you should. That will be easy to find. I'm sure it won't be one of those parts like when I'm looking for Defiant stuff, where each part costs like $50. I'm like, come on, guys, that's not even fair. You could find that miss.
Come on, man. This vehicle saw such a limited run anyway. I'm talking about the direct-to-consumer version, the yellow
Yeah,
missiles. I'm
black
like,
and yellow.
yeah, dude, I think I'm up shit creek because it's not likely that someone just found a loose missile and they're like, oh, I don't have the vehicle anymore. Here, South Africa, you have it.
Well, a lot of the lots have pieces and missiles and stuff from so many different vehicles that I'm pretty sure I've seen it, but the missile by itself in a lot with other stuff, that didn't make any sense by itself with other stuff. I've seen it in lots, on eBay.
Well, let a
tons
brother
of
know.
So yeah, I'll definitely, yeah, I'll let you know. And if helicopter is actually based on actual one, and it's a
What?
good looking, yeah, the Comanche.
Ooh. Oh, yes,
The
yes,
Comanche.
yes. With all that sort of angular stealth design. Mm.
Exactly. And it's just that when I realized that it was a real, helicopter, I was like, wow. I mean, I remember my son and I, both sons actually, and I were just, because it took a while. I never bothered to look up the real world counterparts for a lot of these like modern era stuff, just because it doesn't really change how I'm going to play with it. You know what I mean? But we went on YouTube and we were seeing, maneuvers for, with this particular helicopter. And I'm just like, man, this thing's fast. Like you get an idea for exactly what you should be able to do with such a thing, Yeah, I love the Rhino. It's really slick. Now there are definite ones that I will say miss the mark, even though on the surface they look almost dead on to their real world counterparts, like the Banshee, the Crimson Banshee, which is also it was called the Sky. Shoot, what were they called? It was in the Sky Patrol. It's like it's a stealth bomber. You know what I'm talking about with the little pod.
You're not talking about the Sky Raven, are you?
No. It's smaller. It's an older stealth bomber. And there's a red one. There's a silver Sky Patrol version. We're
talking about the Firebats that's been repurposed. It's sort of a blue.
Not the Firebat. The Firebats. They called those. They re-released those in the Rise of Cobra line, and they were called. God, what were they called? It was like Sky something or other. I hate when
and they sort of added to it in kind of kiddly ways, and not to step on the toes of anyone who is a fan. I think that was a misstep. To recast something as G.I.Joe and sort of add boxy things to it. It's like, break up those cool lines.
Yeah, they added those weird air intakes to it. Yeah, it looks good. It looks like a lot. Like this thing it must be really freaking fast, and it must be for very specific operations, and that's it. But I'm gonna find it and tell you the name real quick. I'm actually on Yo-Joe right now, but it looks like you should be able to fit, like it should be a full-sized stealth bomber, and it's not. You can only fit 2 people in it, and that's when I start getting frustrated with them, because I'm like, you have this awesome design, and you choose not to use it to, its full Sky Sweeper. That was what the Rise of Cobra Firebats were called, and that's what the original release of this stealth bomber was called. It's called the Skysweeper. It came out in 2003. The Rise of Cobra version is the one that I was telling you about. That's what I have, and that one's called the Crimson Hydra.
Oh.
It's pretty nice. But yeah, it's got this weird like fold out wing gimmick with the missiles and stuff, and it only has enough space for, you know, a pilot, and it has a pod underneath, like a spy pod that fits one other character or whatever, and that's it. And I'm like, this thing should be at least half the size of the Shark, the AC-130 that we have for from True Heroes, or even the wingspan of maybe the Beast, because those things are usually long, you know, wingspan wise, they're pretty damn long, you know. And you should be able to fit at least three, you know, have your two pilots and have like a backup person and maybe have the pod if that's what you want to do. It just feels like a lot of times, for the sake of fitting all the stuff in the box, they shrink down a lot of vehicles that should be larger. Whereas in the vintage line, when you look at, like, for instance, the Night Raven, we could look at the new Night Raven and the old one. The old one, it's huge. They were so generous with, like, the amount of plastic that they use to make that vehicle. And it has plenty of room. It looks like it's proper scale to the figure. You know, I mean, I know it's still a little bit smaller than what it probably should be, but it feels like it's substantial. Whereas the new one...
Any bigger than that, you're going to struggle to play with it.
Exactly. And then the new one, they made it small enough that it'd be easy for any kid to play with. It's got the handle and everything. And I like it. It looks like Firefox from the movie Firefox. Remember the Clint Eastwood film?
Can't forget it, man. Jeez. Well, I should say, you can't forget the last, 25 minutes, 30 minutes of it. But the rest, my goodness. Rewatching it as an adult, I was like, what? I rented this as a child. I must have been a very, very patient child, because you know, the good stuff only happens right at the end.
Exactly. But yeah, that's what they went for instead of going for a modernized version of the, you know, SR-71, which they should have, which would have been cool, you know, or Blackbird. I mean, not the SR-71. That's the kind of stuff I see with the modern versus vintage, especially when it comes to vehicles. Is just, back in the day, it seemed like they just wanted to impress. Nowadays, it's like, budget, you know.
But it's been pointed out by a number of different sectors, you know, that the generics, poor man's Joe, whether it's Leonard's offerings or the stuff that True Heroes is putting out, they are able to release substantial vehicles.
Well, yeah, I was playing with my the Beast Bomber earlier today, and because I finally decided I'm going to give it to Cobra and just put a bunch of like Crimson Guards and stuff in there.
I don't know, man. Something that looks that kind of low tech. It almost says Dreadnought to me. Like if there was a corps of Dreadnought pilots.
Yeah, that could work.
That would be their baby. Yeah.
Or the Desert Vipers. Like that could be their.
I'll buy that too.
You know, because they're already that color and everything. But yeah.
So Hasbro don't release big ticket items anymore. They haven't since the Pit.
Yeah.
Because I guess, you know, they do invest a lot more than the competition. You know, Beast Bomber, Rainfire, those things are cool, but they're always a little bit more hollow than a G.I. Joe vehicle. The cockpits aren't detailed. It kind of sells out on a sound and light gimmick instead of like lots of small accessories or features.
But if we're being fair, when you put it side by side with some of the larger Joe stuff, there are lots of Joe vehicles that are on the large side that don't have a ton of detail on the interior. I mean, that's the imagination part. And on like the Beast Bomber, one of the two, I mean, it's still one cockpit, but there's two divisions. The higher one has all the detail on the instrumentation, you know, detail on the cockpit, whereas the secondary one, which would be the gunner seat, because there should be a gun down there. Well, there are four guns on the sides.
It could be the Bombardier, man. It's
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
An old school role, but since it is a rather old school looking craft, you could have a guy down there with a bomb sight hitting the release button. Nice.
That one doesn't have any detail on the inside. So, it's one of those things where, like, almost all around it, you've got tons of detail. It's just when you get, like you said, on the inside, one of the two spots where you put people doesn't have detail. I could live with that. Because look at the thing. It's huge. I mean, it's bigger than all the Joe planes I have. I've had a Sky Striker. It's even bigger than the Republic gunship from Star Wars. And because I've always wanted that to use as a Cobra vehicle for the either just a trooper transport or to drop Paravipers from.
Ooh. What does the engine sound like?
And it sounds huge, It's huge and loud.
Outstanding.
I didn't know how big that thing was until I got it like in hand, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, how does a little kid run around with this, And I'm playing with this, I'm enjoying it, but then when I put it next to the Beast Bomber still kind of dwarfs that thing. It's one of the biggest vehicles I think I have altogether next to the Defiant. So just that novelty right there. It's pretty awesome because you can fit a lot of stuff in there. You can fit a lot of bombs if you want to. You can fit a lot of your figures in there. It's a good trade-off. It's simple enough that you could repaint it if you wanted to. It wouldn't be hard. You don't have many doors to remove or anything like that. So I think it's worth it. Just like the Shark, the AB-115 Shark, the AC-130 from True Heroes. That thing's huge too, and it's got a lot of detail inside and outside. So it easily rivals what we would get from Hasbro, and it didn't even cost a third of what they would have probably charged us if they did that now. Like if they released a bit, look at some of those convention set vehicles that they did, like the Danger at the Docks or the night, what was it called? The night mission set with Sightline and the Sky Striker painted with Python Patrol or Cobra colors, and then the
the switcheroo, the Cobra Scythe and the G.I.Joe Green Hiss. What was it called?
Yeah, I was like, no, you don't do that. Like you could have done that with every other vehicle, but that thing was expensive, and it's only gotten more expensive. Whereas True Heroes is making this right now. They just did a carrier helicopter. I think it's called like a UB-52 or something like that, or UB-51.
It's the Jolly Green Giant. Is it what is it called? A Super 60 or Super 80 or something? Is it that thing?
So.
Like, the giant grey. Oh, what a beaut. Gee whiz.
They just did one.
So in other words, long live the generics, man. I call them the generics, but they are whatever you want to call them. They are G.I. Joe's competitors who have outlasted their inspiration, I guess.
Yeah. On the surface, there's no mistaking which vehicles these are supposed to be. Whereas the Joes, they add that little bit of magic, design magic to them, where it kind of is something else. They take the wings from this thing and the cockpit from this thing, and they kind of put things together.
And not to mention slap removable missiles all over the surface.
Exactly. I like that. I respect the fact that, True Heroes can do that stuff, and I wish, Hasbro would do it. But I think that the fact that we have all those
they
things...
might get sued, buddy.
It's true. They probably would.
I can only imagine, like, True Heroes, since their headquarters is probably in Hong Kong, or, I don't know, I have no idea, really, but they probably do get away with murder.
Yeah.
International patents are harder to enforce, more expensive.
That's true. It's very true. I think, though, that since we have all this stuff, it makes it easier for you to complete the kind of Joe collection, so to speak, that you want, because you have all these choices and you have all these things that you can integrate, and practicing that, just appreciating what's out there and utilizing it just seems like... It almost seems like a no-brainer, because you need certain things that Hasbro just will not make for whatever reason,
Yeah. Unless, of course, you're me, in which case you are limited to the run of figures and vehicles that happened between 1982 and 1994. It's disgusting, dude. I can't even dabble into, like, the latter 90s stuff and the early 2000s stuff. Sure, it's O-ring, but I'm like, nah,
Like,
nah.
what about like you? I know some of it is kind of, but you do have a decent bunch of stuff from the '90s because that's when you started collecting.
Oh no, I'm talking about stuff that took place after a real American hero wrapped up. So anything from the 15th anniversary onwards, like the
Oh,
1997 line, and then that kind of like into the early 2000s, that stuff. I've got a handful of it, but it doesn't see display next to the regular stuff. I'm like, nah. I'm a lost cause, sadly. So I hope this discussion has had an impact on anyone else out there who might be able to break free from these molds. But I
yeah.
don't know if I can be that guy, man.
It's too late for you.
It is. It really is.
But don't. So I remember you talking in like the last podcast. You guys were talking about you and your friend
Alistair?
Alistair.
Oh, yeah.
You were talking about you guys playing with Marauder's stuff. Do you
Sure.
incorporate Marauder's stuff into your what you do with your Joes now? I mean, they make better weapons. Some of that
It's
gear
got to be
can.
modern era only. So Marauder plays well with the modern era. Modern era plays
Uh-huh.
well with Marvel superheroes in that scale. But
Yeah.
I do find that I'm a bit cheesed off that like obviously Star Wars has never upscaled their action figures. Like they
Yeah.
still are the same height, relative height with the O-ring G.I. Joes.
Yeah.
Whereas, Marvel Universe slash Marvel Legends 3¾ inch figures are now 4-inch figures, so they mesh with the Well, yeah, dude, I cannot have Nightcrawler tower over Boba Fett. They cannot
Well,
go on
yeah.
adventures together. I'm sorry, they cannot. Because like Nightcrawler he needs to be a shorter stature kind of guy, and yeah, no, oh, dude, like I say, I'm a mess, complete mess.
Wow.
But my collection is very ordered, and I think, pursuant to this, I'm going to shoot off a Stevens collection video, taking you through a
Yeah.
guided tour over, over here we have Transformers, and only Transformers. Over here we have Star Wars, and only Star Wars. Here's where my Batwing lives, because that's a scale that doesn't belong with anything else.
I know, right?
Yeah, well, that toy doesn't belong anywhere else. I mean, where do you put it? It's the most awkward
Yeah,
shape ever,
that's true.
and it's
That's very
lethal.
true.
Those points will take an eye out.
They're sharp. Yeah, yeah, they're sharp. Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of my my Batmobile because it's just takes up too much space, and I never mess with it. Like it's so big and just it's just awkward. Even I have it next to my other movie Batmobiles and or other Batmobiles in general, and it's like they're underneath the shelf. So when you walk up, you can see the front ends of all of the Batmobiles, but then that one is like protruding, and you're almost tripping on it. It's just ridiculous. But I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but it's huge, and it just seems almost like ridiculous in size. Like it could have been a little bit smaller, but I mean, people wanted it. They wanted it that big, that scale. I love that it's a two-seater, but I'd be lying if I didn't point out how I think it's way oversized.
Oh
Way
my.
oversized.
Oh my, Strident, are you starting to pick up on my scale
Well, no,
scale OCD?
it's just the when I collect, a big thing has always been space. So like there's a few things that I always stick to when I'm in collecting in general, and that's room in my man cave. So space. I know I'll run out of space at some point. So I was never super huge on vehicles. I had a handful of vehicles, and then over time I was kind of like, you know what? I'd find deals or something, and I just get them. So now I have a ton of G.I. Joe vehicles all over the place. Then there's like I used to collect 12-inch figures. I was real big into those. And then I got to a point where I was kind of like, I'm going to relax because I was running out of room for everything else because I had so many of those guys. And the thing with them was the prices of those figures were always going up, which, is the next thing is price. I budget out how much I want to spend a month if I'm going to spend anything, each month on toys, I mean. And I try not to go over it, you know. And sometimes when the price of some of this stuff goes up, especially since I collect import figures as well, you kind of are limited in what you can get for whatever the remaining amount of money is that you have, you know. If you get, you know, say it's $100 or say it's $150 and you buy, you know, 2 import figures that run you like $40-50, you know, that's $100 plus because shipping, you know. You might not really have room to get something else. But then I look at Joe's and they're a little bit cheaper, and you end up each month getting, you know, say I decide not to get any import figures that month, then I end up getting a shit ton of Joe's, and my space that I have set aside for my Joe's is quickly getting full. Like I just moved some stuff, I switched shelves, and I'm looking at the Joe's I have up there, and that's not even all the Joe's I own. And I wanted to have all the Joe's on the shelf, and then I realized, crap, I have Joe's that I have in a different box because I planned on doing stuff with them, like Marauder stuff, and I haven't done it yet. So where am I going to put them? You know what I mean? I'm going to have to switch around something else or buy another shelf or something like that to make room for them, and I kind of hate doing that because I feel like I'm overdoing it. Yeah, space, the size of what I'm collecting, and the price is always a big thing, you know? I don't really want to buy more shelves. I think I have enough shelves. So it's just, what am I going to display today, you know, or this month? Or what am I going to display for this, you know, 6 months? Because I'll rotate stuff sometimes, too.
Oh, man, you're preaching to the choir. I think vintage, modern era, it don't matter. We are all alike in that regard. It is a juggle for space, budget, and that struggle is the same for us all. But I think we've canvassed this topic all right. I mean, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a great coming together of 2 different types of collectors. But one thing is certain, we love this stuff, regardless of the era. I love me some modern era toys. I just can't display them alongside my vintage stuff. But, as I say, you will all soon be witness to exactly how I choose to, I suppose, separate out my collection. And if you want to check out Strydent's videos, yeah, man, he's got some terrific integrations of various toy lines into his G.I.Joe world, mythology. And that's always encouraging. That's cool. I want to be like you, man. No, for real. Like Tron vehicles? Holy shit.
Well, because I always thought, like, when I came up with Weaponsmith, I was like, he has to have a signature of what the stuff he makes would look like. So maybe I'll use Tron stuff, because I found all that stuff on sale. I even have the plane. You remember there was a plane in Tron Legacy?
Oh, yeah.
They made a figure of that, or a vehicle of that, and or a toy of that. I found that on sale too. I think I got it for $20, and I saw it on eBay a while back, and it's up there now. So I'm glad I was able to find.
And that is how you win. To have a quality, cool vehicle that works with your Joe stuff at a price that you just can't sneeze at. Yeah, man.
Exactly.
Nice. But I think that's a wrap on episode 101 of G.I. Joburg. This has been a fantastic, very lively debate. Hell, I didn't even know if we could call it a debate. It seems like we agree on most things. I'm just a stick.
It's just a meeting of the minds, as it were, where we just
good. Son of a teacher.
Just giving, our perspectives, which is good, but maybe someone listening might be caught between these things and, never think to, which that always surprises me, that there's people who, they'll see a review and they'll say, I never thought to do that. And all it is us playing with the toy, kind of the way that we think it's supposed to be played with, and someone else might be saying, I never thought to do that. And this might be that piece to give them the inspiration to do it, Take your Halo figures out, make them attack your Joes. Now you'll have a use for your accelerator suits that everybody hates so much. You can have them fight the Halo 3 figures, or take your accelerator suit guys, put them in your Defiant. Now you got guys in spacesuits. It's done. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about just using your imagination to make things fit where you need them to fit, you know. But yeah, that's it for me.
Sweet.
I think this was awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Strydent. And even if you do pick just one piece of Joe that you cherish and want to collect, don't hate on guys that do like to expand their horizons. We all love this toy line. We can all love different facets or love all facets. But yeah, don't ever be discouraging. I think we should all just perhaps watch our mouths sometimes. It's all too easy to say something that would, be misconstrued or, I don't know, inflammatory to the way other people like to collect. And I know I've personally been guilty of that.
I know I've done it.
Oh yeah.
I'm not.
So this is Steve saying, "Yo, Joe," and keep collecting, guys.
All right, and I'm Strydent, and that's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.
Peace outside. I was about to say it. Man, awesome. So long, my ninjas.